All right, glad to have you back. This is Business Nigeria. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria has decried the proposed 15% increase in port-related charges by Nigerian Ports Authority. As they say, this is counterproductive in the long run. Mr. Ajayi Kadri said, and I quote, "At the time when businesses are struggling with the rising cost of operations, high rates of foreign exchange, astronomical energy costs, and general economic uncertainties, imposing additional financial burdens on manufacturers through increased port tariffs will exacerbate the challenges faced by the rail sector." End of quote. MAN's DG said that increasing port tariffs is ill-timed and could signal a departure from the government's award efforts to commitment to ease of doing business, saying that it is inevitable that this additional strain on industrial activities will ultimately lead to reduced capacity utilization and possibly job losses. Let's talk to the Director General of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria very quickly, Mr. Segun Ajayi Kadri. Good afternoon, DG. It's good to have you on the show today.
Good afternoon, Antolu. It's always a pleasure to join you.
Well, DG, it's a time of series of hikes, series of tariffs coming up everywhere. So first, how would you react to this Nigerian Ports Authority's planned 15% hike? They're saying that it is to build infrastructure and all of that, or improve infrastructure. How does it come to you? What's your reaction to this?
Okay, thank you again. I think it has come to us first as a surprise because we have noticed that the President Tinubu administration has consistently spoken about reduction in the cost of doing business and making it a lot easier for investors to invest in Nigeria, and that he will no longer tax, that Nigeria will no longer tax seed, but Nigeria was going to tax profit and fruits. So the increase in the port charges came as a direct additional cost to businesses in Nigeria, particularly manufacturers. It came as a surprise, and we are hopeful that it will not be yet another addition to the plethora of increases that we have had in the cost of doing business, which is inimical to the agenda of government to promote domestic production, incentivize export, and grow the economy to $1 trillion by 2030. We have the opinion that port charges and related costs are too important to the Nigerian economy to be hiked in the manner it's been done, and that government should take immediate action to allay the fears of investors and existing manufacturers and other business owners who use port facilities to desist from this trend. This is not what is happening among the neighboring countries, and we shouldn't inadvertently incentivize trade diversion and things that will make us uncompetitive in the light of the emerging African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement implementation and even the ETLS that we have not maximally benefited from.
That is big. Trade, diverting trade to other countries. But DG, let me follow up with the fact that we've had discussions before now where business owners, manufacturers complain about the state of the port and talk about increasing this infrastructure. So what options do you think the NPA has for this to help also improve infrastructure? If they don't, they said this the last time was in 32 years.
Okay, so I think that this has been a long conversation that we actually need to face more seriously. Unfortunately, in this country, we lack institutional memory, and the issues that we have passed before have continued to confront us. We have said it consistently that what is needed by government is to expand the base and not to compound the challenges and the costs that we have. Many people don't use our port facilities, and trade is being diverted to other areas simply because we have an inefficient system. a system that does not promote volume, but actually preys on those that are existing. Clearly, what is needed is for us to improve our processes, is for us to expand the scope of businesses that is transacted at the ports, is for us to improve the infrastructure that is there. And then we will be able to generate a broader base for achieving our revenue targets. And what we are actually saying is that the timing of this increase is simply unwise. There is no reason while you are trying to incentivize trade, while you are trying to increase volume, while you are trying to become a hub in the West African sub-region at least, for you to now make the environment inconducive for both those that are existing and will be users of the ports. And there has not been any sufficient engagement with stakeholders for us to be able to assess the possible impact, and then for us to co-create an environment that brings about more viable options than just unilaterally imposing 15% hike. I mean, that is humongous. And for people who are dealing with issues of high cost of production and the disposable income of the average Nigerian declining, it is simply something that we shouldn't allow to happen. And I must say it again, that this is not in line with President Tinubu's commitment to improving the ease of doing business and driving down the cost of doing business. This is a direct and unmitigated addition to the cost of doing business.
So let's talk about how competitive our manufacturing sector is at this time. We've been talking so very much about the AFCFTA. Even now that we are seeing tariffs come even from the United States, everyone is worried. How well or how competitive is the sector considering these challenges we've raised?
Tolu, as at the last count, we are nearing 1.7 trillion naira of unsold inventory in our warehouses. Manufacturers are beginning to hire warehouses to keep their unsold goods. We are not competitive even in our domestic market because we have huge influx of foreign goods that unfairly compete with us. We are nearing cost levels that will make us to be uncompetitive when we are compared with products that come from low-cost environments. We are beginning to see a situation where our products are expiring on the shelf because of the dwindling disposable income of the average Nigerian. So if you add any costs to doing business, the resilience of the manufacturing sector in Nigeria, which has been the sustaining factor in our history, will just disappear. So it is making us uncompetitive even in our domestic market, not to talk of a situation where you want to export, where you have to compete with other products that comes from other economies and the domestic economies of the export countries. So I believe that we need to be intentional about driving down the costs of doing business. And we cannot achieve that by just losing exactly what we have gained in the relative stabilization we've had. I think this administration has committed itself to stabilizing the economy. And I must agree that we are already achieving some measure of stability. But this destabilization is quite uncalled for and unnecessary. I believe that we needed to engage more. I mean, President Tinubu cannot be imagining a $1 trillion economy and decapitating the productive sector. That cannot be the intention of government. So we need to rein in all regulatory agencies, all institutions of government to follow Mr. President's agenda. Domestic production is the only way we can hope to achieve a reduction in inflation, improve our forest stock, create employment for the people, and generally improve the economic environment in which we operate. Most countries of the world are becoming nationalistic in their policy. we shouldn't throw our own thriving economies to the dogs.
But in the same vein, we are also hearing, there's also news, because there's been reaction to that too, that the Nigerian Customs Service wants to implement a 4% FOB levy. Now, tell us again, what is the implication of this?
Honestly, Tolu, that is one thing that I find very difficult to understand. And that the two of them are coming at the same time speaks to policy coordination, I must say. There is need for us to ensure, to realize that all of these are happening to the same set of people or of corporate entities. The same users of the port that are struggling to abate the 15% hike in port charges is the same group of businesses that are confronted with a 4% sudden and inopportune addition in terms of levy. So in essence, what you are telling me as a manufacturer is that the raw materials that I ordered for a month, 2 months ago is going to come in at a cost that is 4% higher, not minding the fact that I've had to contend with an exchange rate that is prohibitive, not minding that the cost of power is high, rising, and not reliable, not minding that I'm suffering lack of sales due to the disposable income of the average Nigerian, not minding that because of insecurity, I'm not able to have a smooth logistics to support my business, not minding that inflation is 34.8%, not minding that I'm borrowing at more than 30%, it cannot work. So I believe that customs needs to even align itself with the spirit and the letters of the 4 bills of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform that is before the National Assembly. There is no place for levies like this. And I think that we should be coherent and consistent in the way that we will run our economic policies, such that we can be taken more seriously by will-be investors and we can instill confidence in existing manufacturers. Tolu, you know it, that our CEOs confidence index in the last 4 quarters have consistently indicated that manufacturers are losing confidence in the outlook of the sector, that they are beginning to consider seriously divesting or relocating to more friendly countries. We are beginning to see their well-known resilience wane. This is the time for government to work with the private sector, and President Tinubu has demonstrated unparalleled commitment to partnering with the private sector. I think we need to take it to the last mile, where we are able to have the concurrence of all agencies of government so that there is a freeze from the drift to the inadvantaged deindustrialization of Nigeria. We should not allow it to happen. I mean, we have wide opportunities to widen our employment net and to be able to bring the reforms of this government to full fruition. There is no need for us to be distracted by all these unexpected introduction of cost escalating measures. And I think we all have to queue behind the president's agenda of improving this economy and let's run it. I don't see why from now going on, a directive cannot be issued to all government agencies that they must link up with this Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform before we have any form of introduction of fees, levies, or tax in whatever form it comes, because we must be moving in the same direction at the same time. And Nigerians are eager to see the gains of the necessary reforms that this administration has put in place.
Already, you've talked about the outlook. It's not looking pretty good. But I'll touch on local sourcing, because I know that aside all of this, you still are faced with some challenges. The FX issues, we've talked about infrastructure issues, electricity, tariffs, and all of that. So, but what about the issue of local sourcing that will reduce this dependence on FX and all of that? Are we doing better than we used to do?
I mean, absolutely. An average manufacturer will normally prefer to source his raw materials locally. And the issues we contend with is dealing with those ones that cannot be sourced locally, or that we have not grown sufficient capacity to solve locally. Now, the issue of insecurity has in some cases hampered our capacity to source our raw materials locally. There is also the need for us to ensure that the logistics of having local supply of our raw materials is improved upon. And I can tell you there are several of our members that have even gone beyond the process of manufacturing to backward integrate, such that they can be insulated from the vagaries of import duties, forex, and geopolitics of this world. So we are doing quite a lot there. But what we are saying is that for those ones that have to continuously source their raw materials from outside of the country, it should be made a lot easier for them, so that overall we'll be able to have a net gain in terms of our trade. And that is what should be of paramount importance to government. I can assure you, Tolu, that there are so many government policies, there are so many issues that even the private sector and my organization has co-created with government in terms of partnership and participating on some high-level committee of government. So there is need for us to put speed to action. There's need for us to deepen the engagements we are having, so that we will be able to achieve the gains that these necessary reforms of government has fostered on us. I mean, there is no way that an economy can improve without making tough decisions. But immediately after the tough decisions, government has to demonstrate capacity to carry through. And for us to be able to understand that a varied manufacturing sector is indispensable to the overall inclusive growth of an economy. I mean, that has been proven. You can look at what Trump 2.0 is doing. It's all about America, and it's all about domestic manufacturing. I don't necessarily agree with his tactics, but it has shown clearly that what a nation needs is to be able to defend and protect domestic production, so that you achieve some measure of self-sufficiency and be able to export to the world, such that you'll be able to gain from international trade. I believe that we should not be taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps backward. We should focus on the measures that will be required to boost a sector that all of us have agreed, including government, including private sector people, and even our development partners, that is important for the growth of our economy. You can't have 230, 240 million people and not be able to put them to work, and not be able to incentivize their productivity. I mean, that is where lies our strength, and we should just go ahead and do it.
I must thank you so much for making sense of this topic of discourse, and we will stay on this, get all sides of the story, make sure that we let Nigerians understand what is actually on the floor, because inclusive growth and development is what everyone wants at the end of the day. Mr. Segun Ajayi-Kadri is the Director General of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Thank you so much for sharing your afternoon with us. We really appreciate this.
Thank you, Tolu. It's always a pleasure.